business, and I've got one too. You can't mind your business. What's the matter with you?
Welcome to the latest episode of the Brand Shorthand Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Vandegrift, and with me is the Amazon of advertising, Lorraine Kessler. Lorraine, how you doing today?
Oh, all 5'4" of me. I was considered an Amazon in my family of small Italians.
It's what's in your brain about
Well,
positioning, Lorraine. That's what made me think about that.
it goes to say that all positions are relative, Mark.
That's great.
Uh,
Well, we are back today to continue our topic of exploding myths in the area of marketing, advertising, and positioning. And Lorraine, I just wanted to ask before we get going on our topic here, did you hear about John Schnattner of Papa John's Pizza and what he recently did?
Yeah, and he and the board, whoever kicked him out from being CEO a few years ago, in the wake of when he stepped into the NFL controversy over kneeling players. John did not like that and was very outspoken about it. And of course, Papa John's back then, what was that, about 2015, I think?
I think 18.
18, okay.
Yep.
Was very public about his disapproval of that. And they, of course, Papa John's advertised quite a bit with the NFL. And that became a big controversy that he took aside. And so the board forced him to kind of step down as CEO. And now it's continuing with some other claims and some other snafus over racism and some things that he said. And they've gone back and forth. The problem here is, aside from the political issues, is what we just talked about, I think in a couple of podcasts ago, about like when the CEO of Kellogg's, right, basically told people dealing with rising food prices and having 11% more of their money going to try and feed their family, well, just let them eat cereal for dinner. You know?
Yeah.
Which,
Let them eat cake.
Oh, yeah. So I could just imagine being the brand manager at Kellogg. And, oh, my God, I don't need enemies when my CEO says things like this.
Yeah.
When the personnel, Papa John's, better ingredients, better pizza, had one of the clearest positions. Jack Trout, our friend and mentor, gave it to them in a meeting with John early on. And they have had tremendous success with that differentiating idea. Very simple idea, very believable idea, not hard to communicate, not hard to understand. But over the years, John has allowed success to go to his head, and he's become kind of the brand. Whenever you have, they don't want to hear this stuff. They really don't care about it. So it's a total distraction. And it's just another example of, let's just shoot ourselves in the foot and have our CEO do it for us, right?
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think you can definitely handle that if the CEO rides off into the sunset in the good graces of its audience, like an Orville Redenbacher.
Right.
Then you can kind of immortalize him.
Yeah.
But in this case, I don't think that's going to happen. Did you hear what they did to change the name?
Oh.
They took the apostrophe out of Papa John, distanced themselves from John.
Yeah.
I'm like, what does an apostrophe have to do with anything?
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's plural Johns, like a whole family. It's not one person. It's not one John. It's a whole family of Johns. I saw that. I thought it was a typo. I had to read. And the fact that they even announced it as a kind of a rebranding is just, it's mind-numbing.
It is.
Big brands, big trouble. If Jack Trout right now is just rolling in his grave, I know.
Well, I'm sure he and John would get in a room and just, they'd probably kibitz and say this is the worst thing in the world, but John doesn't have anything to do with it anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
who knows? But let's get to our topic here of exploding positioning myths. The first last week was the better company, product, or service wins. And then number two, the second myth was my business is a commodity, which is also just a myth. And
All of which we're debunking. These are all
yes,
debunked.
all of which we're debunking.
Yeah.
Myth number 3 was competition is to blame for commoditization, which is not true. And then the 4th myth we covered last week and exploded is we're not a brand. And as we discussed, everyone, every company, every service, everything is essentially a brand once it gets a label and gets filed in the mind somewhere. So we're going to pick up with myth number 5 this week. And Lorraine, I will let you take that one.
Yeah, I mean, this is the myth that people have that bigger is better, right? That our whole goal is to get bigger and bigger, and that size is the determinant of success. And the key is that size is not a strategy, right? Focus is. And sure, if you have size, you have more resources, and you might be able to wage a more hefty marketing war. But that doesn't mean it's the best strategy for profitable growth. It could be growth that with very little profit or no profit. It could be that it just isn't growth at all. You hit kind of a saturation point. The basic thing is that focus is the secret to success, not size. So the better way to expand is by narrowing. So, and what do we mean by narrowing? It means that think about the sun, right? The sun's a great ball of energy, but it diffuses its light across a wide area. So we can walk around in the day
and not burn up.
not be zapped, right? Like ants under a magnifying glass. I'm sorry if anybody did that as a kid. I didn't, but I did know about it. But a laser is a very low energy form of light, right? But it's extremely focused, and it can bore a hole through a diamond, or it can cure a cancer because it's so powerful, it's so focused. And that's how I think companies should think about their business, not trying to be all things to all people or going too broad, but finding out what is the one thing that you can focus on and mass your resources on that front. And if you're going to have a much greater chance of breaking through and establishing something long lasting and memorable. So you're going to be able to burn a brand into the brain much better by doing that. And we see that these brands that are focused, they could be, there's many ways to do that, right? You could be geographically focused. You could be focused on one category. You could be an expert in one type of clientele or one kind of category. The specialist always wins against the generalist. So there's a lot of ways to win. But what happens when you focus is, again, you get the maximum impact of your resources on that front. And you also narrow your competitors down, which is an advantage too, because it's a lot easier to put them on their heels if you're really putting your focus on a particular area. And so we see that, I remember the great story when I started in this business. I read the book by Andy Grove, Only the Paranoid Survive. And he was the CEO of Intel. And at that time, they were doing lots of different things for computers, as I recall, and I'm not specific in all the details. But he decided, and it didn't seem like this made sense. It seemed counterintuitive that they needed to focus only on microchips. And I'll never forget the story he told in the book that he and I think another executive were debating because they felt they were too diffused. What do we do? And do we only focus on microchips, or do we do this and keep trying to do all these other things? And he said to the other executive, let's say we were both fired and we walked out of here. What would the next CEO do? And they answered the question, he would or she would only focus on microchips. Then why don't we do that? Yeah. So I think that's the kind of ground zero thinking you have to kind of get back to what focus is all about.
That sounds a lot like A.G. Lafley's book, Where to Play.
Yeah. Yep. What a great book. I'm glad you mentioned that. People should really pick up Playing to Win by A.J. Lafley and how he went into P&G and applied a lot of this thinking. What can we be really great at in a marketplace? Where can we play to win when we dominate a sandbox, and et cetera? So anyway, size is not the determinant of success. In fact, size can end up creating problems. Look at Boeing, right? Um, Boeing is now going into space and they're trying to expand, but they have a problem of focus, right?
Yeah, they do.
They have a culture that's been so about eating up and growing size wise that they've lost a sense for what really matters in their industry and how to make air travel safe for passengers. So, just
Yeah.
another example.
Well, I like what you said is the best growth strategy, whether you're in a good economy or a bad one, is to decide what not to do.
Right,
And sometimes using the negative of this is better for people because our tendency is just to try to do everything.
right.
And so managing to what not to do is really a good focus. You know, of all places, it it probably would be unexpected, but from our web department, I was
Hmm.
given some very good knowledge a long time ago, and that is you can really go into any technology, but you really should not go into every technology.
Technology. Right.
And so, we focused on certain programming platforms, certain languages, and only certain CMSs. Because if you try to be all things to all people, you have to hire 1,000 people because nobody can know all those technologies.
Right.
So, as we've carved out our niche in the web world, specifically with our developers, they always remind me, okay, if we get someone that asks to do this, it's probably best if we just say no.
Yep.
And that's always a good reminder from them when it comes to doing this. So we we get lessons from unexpected sources sometimes, right?
That's great. And we've gone through discussions, and you recall them in the past, where we were headed towards diffusement, trying to be either being too specialist and becoming a digital agency. There was that conundrum, and should we have a web agency and we give it a different name, um, and we had to go through this. But I love what you just said, and that is AJ Lafley. Decide what you won't do, what you
Mhm.
can't do, because it will only detract from what you should be doing or can do better than anybody else in the world.
Good.
Mhm.
Well, myth number 5 is, or number 6, I'm sorry, is branding is only about advertising. So positioning is a pretty radical strategy. We get that.
Mhm.
It goes to the core. But unless you know that what the brand stands for or what you want it to stand for, you cannot make effective decisions about how to run your business. So you can't just think that if you put an ad out there that and say we're different in this way and not act like that, then you've immediately disconnected not only your company, but also your employees and then the people that service whoever bought into that promise or that difference. And so all of a sudden, it becomes something where branding and positioning, which go hand in hand, is core to the anatomy of the company.
Mhm.
So that's why we say positioning is a business strategy more so than just a marketing strategy
Absolutely.
because it impacts the entire organization. So
Mhm.
when you ask or you think through critical questions, they might be things like this. What services or what capabilities should we support and develop based on our difference?
Mhm.
Or who are our best prospects? Who are our best clients? How should we be structured? It even has to do with
Mhm.
what your position could be. Should you be doing more of? And of course, as we just said, what should you not do or be
Mhm.
doing less of? What kind of business partnership should we have? What kind of knowledge and expertise do we need to build with our associates? So for us, positioning training is an ongoing thing. We have some interns starting here soon. And one of the very first meetings we have is drilling them with this understanding of what positioning is at its core.
Mhm.
Um, Whatever your company stands for, you want to make sure you're team members, your associates, your employees know what that difference is and how to communicate it. Otherwise, you're always backing up. You advance, and then you take 2 steps back because you had a new employee who went out there and couldn't properly express the position of the company.
Right.
Okay. Now, all of those questions had nothing to do with advertising. Again, this myth is that branding is only about advertising. I haven't even asked an advertising question yet. But then you do get to advertising. That is, what should our advertising say? What should our advertising look like? What should our public relations be?
Mhm.
Because advertising and public relations are not the same.
Right.
What should our selling be like? Or what should our sales tools look like? So these are all things that go outside of advertising. So thinking that branding is just this small portion of your organization is really a big myth.
Yep.
And I am here to explode it.
Yes, exploded. So I like that. We should probably do that.
Yeah, I'll do that on screen.
So we're going to explode the myth of the general market next, right?
Okay, myth
And
number.
we've said this, and we've said it in different ways in just the last few. So there's a little bit of repetition and overlap in some of these, but that's okay because you have to say things in different ways, the same thing in many different ways for some people to click in. We know that. So the idea here is that the essence of positioning is sacrifice. There are no general markets, right? There is, you deliberately have to cultivate a narrow line somewhere.
Mhm.
That depth is more effective than breadth, right? So this goes back to what we're talking about. Size is not the determinant of success, focus is. There is no general market, all right? So I'm going to have people say, well, there's general stores like Walmart, right? But look at where they focused. Low price, right? They weren't just a general store that tried to serve all price segments or all customers. They set out to serve a particular customer. Today in our market, we have one called Meijer. How is Meijer different than Walmart? They're kind of general in terms of their merchandise. They have food and they have products and hardware and home goods and things like that. They are primarily a grocery store with
Yep.
the other stuff added on. Their understanding of grocery is preeminent and is invert to what I think Walmart now is groceries, but that's not where they started. They started as kind of the dry goods and added food. So there still is a focus, but be careful. Don't get too general with anything. So that's really, we know that the specialist wins. The person who has greater expertise in a certain area tends to win, right? If I'm a hospital and I'm looking for an agency, we know that unless we had hospitals and a lot of healthcare credentials, which we do, but let's say we didn't, we stand a very slim chance winning against a healthcare expert who's only focused on healthcare marketing.
Yep.
It's just the way that works. So explode the myth. There are no general markets. Even if you're going to have general categories of goods and services, you've got to find a segment that you're going to win with, right?
Yeah.
And whether that's a price segment, whether that's a lifestyle segment, whatever that is.
Well, and that really plays true in the world of web. We saw that it really bump up as a positioning value once the web came around, because as we're shopping on the web, what don't we have yet? We don't have trust.
Right.
And so I always call it that trust bump, that if it's obvious on your site that you're a specialist in that area, that
Right.
almost automatically engenders me over someone that is trying to sell all things.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
I believe that specialist is going to offer a better product than if I were just to go find it on Amazon.
Yep.
And if I care about the quality, that's probably why I would make that decision.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, myth number 8 is that branding costs money. Let's explode that one. Branding makes money. And I always like to start with Peter Drucker's comment, which is that a business can only create a customer in 2 ways. One is innovation, 2 is marketing.
Right.
Well, if you create a customer that means what? You make money.
You're making money.
So if innovation and marketing make money,
Hmm.
then you need to do one or two of those things. Better to do both.
Right.
So branding actually makes money. It doesn't cost money. We had to get this through clients' minds, and what we find is that even on our proposals now, we don't say cost, we say investment.
Hmm.
Because if what we do for our clients is not making them money, then we should quit doing what we're doing for our clients,
Right.
because no one wants a marketing expense that produces nothing. So the investment that companies make in branding is not just to sell more, but ultimately to decrease the customer's sensitivity to price,
Right.
which goes back to last week when we talked about commodity markets or commodity products.
Right.
So, yeah,
And
I would say it could be argued that the default position of branding is not to increase sales, but rather to increase profits.
yeah.
And let that sink in for for a few people. I'll say that again because I think it's pretty significant. It could be argued, let me see if I say this the right way.
Yeah.
It could be argued the default position of branding is not to increase sales, but rather to increase profits.
Right.
And, profit is a direct result of protecting the pricing integrity through powerful brand differentiation. We always show the market capitalization of companies like Coke
Yeah.
and what a difference it is between what their books value at them at and then what their market cap is. And that whole gap in there has a lot to do with their brand. We
Right.
like to call that goodwill or a lot of things, but it has value that companies are willing to pay for.
Yeah. And I used to like what I would teach our new associates about positioning. And I would say, let me put a scenario out there. Let's say uh, Coca-Cola woke up tomorrow and all of its manufacturing plants were bombed out. They were all destroyed through a terrorist act. Um, could they rebuild?
Mm-hmm. That's a great way
Um,
to look.
and conversely, if they woke up tomorrow and their brand got associated with something abhorrent in the world, could they rebuild?
Hmm.
And it's a pretty obvious answer. The brand is more valuable than the physical
Asset.
structures and
Yep.
facilities, right? So, I mean, that's most people don't get to that level, but it's important to know what you said before, that one of the default positions of branding is it desensitizes the customer's sensitivity to price.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only reason why Starbucks could charge $5 for a
Yep.
5-cent cup of coffee, right?
Yep.
It's the only reason. Um, people will wax on about, well, no, how much better the quality is. It's all perception, quality perception that drove what people say about the coffee and the product. So yes, this is a really important one. Think long term. It brand pays dividends because the sales that you do accrue end up being profitable sales, not just sales.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good. Okay, I'll let you take myth number 9.
Well, this is kind of goes back to our other thing about, bigger's not better. Growth for growth's sake is just not a good goal, right? I mean, some people think all growth is good growth. That's the myth that we're exposing. No, it isn't. There are, of course, different types of growth in sales, growth in market share, growth in market penetration, and so on. However, the only growth that really matters is, as we were just talking,
Mm-hmm.
profitability. It's easy to grow sales and market share and still be unprofitable, right?
Yeah.
Now, unless that's your strategy, like Jeff Bezos, where he
Yep.
convinced his constituents, his investors, I'm not going to see profit for 20 years because this is such a new and big idea and so differentiating. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually going to change the way people, the behavior of people, and how they buy. That's a pretty huge ambition. But for most, what I always think about is, all those no-name products that are at the cash register when you're checking out at a store and you don't know the name, but you throw it in your basket because maybe you need rubber bands or you need a candy and you don't know the name, but okay, it was there. These impulse products, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think they add up So you better be prepared to keep producing that stuff day in, day out without having a lot of money to do anything else but produce that product and get it into a chain. I don't think that's like being a hamster on a wheel, right?
Yes. Yep.
I don't, you don't get what the book Good to Great, Jen Collins' book, talks about, the flywheel,
Mhm.
where you start pushing and you start hitting maximum force. And as you get that thing going, the flywheel, you can stand back and it's going to go on its own. And that's what branding does for your business. So, and the other part of that is undisciplined growth is usually an unsuccessful strategy that leads to this idea of profitless prosperity,
Mhm.
right? I'm just continuing to sell things, but I'm not able to do much with that. I can't plan for the future and what have you. So I think that's a good myth to
I like
explore.
that. Good. Well, myth number 10 is one that I both cringe that it is not correct,
Mhm.
but at the same time, I shout it from the rooftops
Yeah,
because I'm a lover of efficiency. Am I
yeah,
not, Lorraine?
right.
So the myth number 10 is efficiency is king.
Yeah,
Okay. I love efficiency. Don't get me wrong.
yeah,
But we run into efficiency deployed the wrong way over and over and over again. And
hmm,
guess where it comes from? Big brands.
yep,
So just keep this in mind that your procurement staff is not king. And that's a good way to remember this
yeah,
is efficiency is king is a myth.
right,
The answer is procurement is not king. The goal of your company should not be efficiency, but rather effectiveness.
right.
Um, the easiest way to think of this is would you choose a doctor based on efficiency or effectiveness? Oh, great. He got me through in 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Oh, my heart's missing.
yeah.
Oops.
You missed that I have serious diabetes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, what's ultimately important is not how hard you try or how many hours you spend or don't spend, but whether you win the case successfully, right?
right.
Or you keep a client out of, let's say, tax trouble, or you make sure the heart is repaired, or you create more equity for your client's brand. Um, I think the problem that we run into with this, let's issue an RFP, go out and get the low price, is that companies are managing to cost now instead of managing to investment. And that
Yeah,
goes back to the previous myth that I talked about. It isn't that brands are overpriced, it's that they're under exclusive.
right.
And
That's,
that
would agree.
is the hugest point here.
Hmm.
Price and differentiation are directly correlated. And it talks about commodity there, it talks about a lot of things. But if you're going back out and doing business based on just cutting as much cost as you can, then you're not creating value. And CEOs will argue till they're red in the face. Actually, probably the CFOs will
Yeah.
argue until they're red in the face. But if you want to make more, you have to charge more. And if you want to charge more, you need a strong brand. And you
Hmm.
can't have a strong brand without differentiation because, again, if it's not that you're overpriced, it's that you are under exclusive. You
Right.
need to create and be the only. So,
This is a good one because I'm sure we'll get a lot of argument over this for just some of the reasons that you mentioned. Again, I would say it's a matter of emphasis, right? We're
mhm,
not saying be inefficient
not at
because
all.
inefficiency can cost you money and not lead to profit. But efficiency is kind of a skill you develop to be through learning, right? Through
Yep.
trial and error, through experience, and then you learn to codify. This is the most efficient path to do what? To be effective as possible.
Yeah.
So the being effective is the end goal. The
Yeah.
efficiency is kind of the tool that will enable that. So they're not so much foes as a matter of um, cause and effect, I think,
Yeah.
and how you put them in the right order.
Well, and the emphasis on that one is king,
Yeah,
right? The
Yeah.
myth is efficiency is king.
Yeah.
Well, a myth efficiency might be the queen or it might be the 10 of diamonds. I'm not sure where it
Yes.
falls.
Yeah. The helper.
It's just not, it can't lead,
Right.
or you're going to be upside down in your thinking, or you're going to be out of whack with your
Yeah.
thinking.
And
So,
this goes with, we're in an age because of digital measurement, right?
yeah,
So if all of your measures are about efficiency and not about effectiveness, then that's where this gets distorted. That's
right.
where the king takes over, and now you're on the wrong path.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, very good. Let's close up this episode of the Brand Shorthand. As always, we appreciate all those who have tuned in. And if you haven't liked, shared, commented, or subscribed
Yeah.
to the Brand Shorthand podcast, please do. And until next time, have an amazing day.
Business but my own.